Hey,
Hey there, Alex.
so I think we could jump right in. No need to, I don't think we need much of a preamble. I'm gonna mention your name, ask you to introduce yourself, and then actually what I'll do is I'll mention you as a guest, do a very quick wave top, and then ask you to introduce yourself, provide a bio, and then we can get into a little give and take, pretty informal, easy crowd. All right.
Cool.
All right. So thanks for joining me for Why It Matters. This will be going over my Substack and posting into YouTube, and I'll amplify through social media. I've got Colonel Frank Rosenblatt joining me today. I'll ask him to introduce himself and talk, but I wanted to frame this conversation a little bit, why we're having it. It's only been over 4 months, not quite 5 months, and in that time Trump is doing what he's done to other departments and agencies, attempting to crush dissent, subordinate them to his own personal desires. In doing this to the Department of Defense, he's fired senior military leadership. These would be senior four-star women and black men. He has excoriated DEI policies that are important for a diverse force so we could recruit the best and brightest. And we'll touch on some of that. He is signaled that the military is his tool to employ for his own personal agenda. He's deployed troops in blue states that he has called enemies, and not limiting them to any specific role, but anywhere at any time in the country. And yesterday, particularly sickening to me, he gave a speech to Fort Bragg, and we'll get into it a little more as to why this was so egregious, standing in front of this nation's premier fighting unit and riling them up to cheer his political antics and his degradation of political opponents. And the military brass has stayed silent. So we're in a unprecedented, dangerous moment. That's why I'm super pleased and grateful that my friend Frank Rosenblatt will join. We've known each other. We met way back in. This is a moment of lightness and a very difficult topic, but we met way back in 2000, I want to say, in my first assignment, and I think it was Frank's first assignment as infantryman in Korea, and I've stayed in contact ever since. He was a simple infantryman back then, and now he's gone on to do great things, leading some charges here. So I'm going to kick it over to Frank to tell us a little bit about himself. Hopefully he doesn't, share any embarrassing stories about me, but and then we could have a good conversation about why this is such a perilous moment. Thanks, Frank.
Hey, thanks a lot, Alex. I've positioned the camera so that I can see behind me my plaque from the 506th Infantry Regiment, where Alex and I were infantry platoon leaders together. I've been very proud to follow you and your success, Alex. So about me, I am a retired lieutenant colonel. I went on from being an infantry officer to being a JAG officer. And since then, I clerked in federal court in Washington, D.C., worked for a law firm, and now I work as a law professor at Mississippi College School of Law in Jackson, Mississippi, where I teach classes such as constitutional law and military law. I'm here in my personal capacity today. I'm also the president of a civil society organization called the National Institute of Military Justice. We have been around since 1991, and we advocate in many ways for the fair administration of justice in the armed forces.
It's an excellent and illustrious background of service, military service, and as a JAG officer, a expert on Uniform Code of Military Justice and frankly larger civil military relations and in constitutional issues. So, with my somewhat long preamble about what has happened with regards to civil military relations, what this deployment means, some of the events, some of the policies that went into effect over the past couple of days. I'd like to hear your thoughts, and we go back and forward on why this is such a I don't say this lightly. This is this to me kept me up last night, and I was thinking about it all night, and have been on social media talking about the dangers. So what's the view from somebody that is in the legal field?
Yeah, I mean, this is an issue that has many different interesting angles to look at. One is the constitutional law aspect of this. We are here. We are seeing, as happened many times in the first Trump administration, claims of inherent executive authority, and presidents and executives are on stronger ground when they are arguing for things that have been well recognized within their purview, such as national security and immigration. So this will go up through the courts. We don't really see much in terms of robust congressional challenges to this. And there's already been a court decision or a court case that's been filed in the Northern District of California. Not to get into the weeds of this, but I do think that what this comes down to when our Article 3 courts look at these is the question of pretext. Is it going to pass the laugh test, these claims of executive privilege? This reminds me of Trump versus Hawaii in the first administration, where President Trump started off by saying, "We want a Muslim ban." And then they said, well, we need to change the words to make it sound more national security like and immigration like. And ultimately, that's what the Supreme Court came down to. 5 out of 4 of the justices said this passes the laugh test. He's made a claim that's within presidential powers. And 4 justices said, this is baloney. We know what this really is. It's a Muslim ban. So the same thing I think applies here. Do we accept the president's claims of a real national security immigration crisis in Los Angeles?
Okay. So, what do you take? What's your take on this executive order? It provides wide latitude and broad directions to the rest of government on uh, troop deployments. This is not limited to the pretext of supporting law enforcement in LA. I'd like you to touch on that topic. You know, what role do they actually fill under their Title 10 authorities? But is is it just limited to LA? Are there broader implications? And where do those implications land disproportionately, with regards to the president's political enemies?
Yes. Well, we have a history in this country of the use of the military domestically. For example, Hawaii was put under martial law in the year after Pearl Harbor, and the military famously provided disaster relief response to Hurricane Katrina. And even in Los Angeles, there's a history there. But from constitutionally and military culture and everything else, the rankles really go up with the use of the military in the United States. It really needs to be in a way that's very different from the use of the military otherwise. Sensitive concerns of federalism, executive overreach, as when President Truman tried to seize a steel mill in Youngstown. And so an executive order that just says, let's just get after this and use the military wherever we can in the United States. It's going to have to be a lot more narrowly circumscribed. And I think the military, you and I have a lot of our peers there, and they're going to be taking a really hard look at what it is that they're actually being asked to do.
Yep. So where right now the indications are this is going to be these ICE raids that were seemingly intentionally provocative, not de-escalatory, but provocative and intending to catalyze a situation from maybe peaceful protests to violence. Those are not going to be just limited to LA. There's some indications that Chicago, New York, San Francisco, other blue bastions, as far as the president describes them, are in the crosshairs. What are your thoughts on that?
That comes down to the emergency orders and whether they pass the laugh test. Are these truly emergencies where local and state officials have been unable or unwilling to act in a way that threatens the national security of the United States? Or are these crises of the president's own creation?
Yeah, that seems like a pretty high bar when you have thousands of law enforcement officers in LA, and the governor of of California, as well as the mayor saying that the situation is under control, but instead of de-escalating, the president sends in the Marines. By the way, when you hear send in the Marines, what's the first thought that comes to mind? Do you think de-escalation and stability, or what is sending in the Marines mean to you?
Uh, to me, it's so much posturing. I think that you and I know that there are infantry forces in the National Guard, in the active army, and in the Marines, and I think that the optics of this are to show that I've got some especially tough military members who are politically aligned with me.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. When I hear we're sending in the Marines, it means it's a tough situation. You want some tough guys in there to crack some skulls to defend the nation, to defend our national security. This is not a force that you bring in that's going to be, kid gloves and now these are highly trained individuals, disciplined, don't get me wrong, but the idea that the Secretary of Defense on the one hand talks about the warrior ethos and that we have cold killers out there that are going to protect the country, and then he says we're going to send in the Marines because they could de-escalate and protect stuff. Those two ideas don't really jive to me. So I'm curious as to your thinking on this parade that's coming down. What if you were putting on your kind of I don't want you to get too deep in the weeds on the illegal component, but like if you're thinking about what the president's motivations are, what is he trying to do by going to conduct this parade on his birthday, or go to go to Fort Bragg? What's your guess?
Well, Alex, the combination of Los Angeles and the DC parade, they remind me of some of the research of a scholar named Elizabeth Lutz Hillman, and she talked about the use of the military as ways to project manliness and really sort of this macho culture. And so it's no surprise with that use to also see at the same time this past weekend the president's ban on trans soldiers and military members went into effect. I think, gosh, you would want all the military people that you can get. But if your view of the military is this sort of macho force that's going to stand with you, then you can view the trans ban as part and parcel with the military parade and the calling of the Marines in Los Angeles.
I think I look at it from my perspective, serving in combat, serving in Moscow for 3 years, actually observing the way that paramilitary National Guard troops are employed for crowd control, to disperse, to coerce, to intimidate. Watching the Russian Victory Day parades, that this is a strongman attempting to demonstrate that he has absolute control to stifle opposition, to fundamentally chill First Amendment rights, to protest, to speech, and that really doesn't sit with me. That's why this is Fort Bragg, as he's now designated again, Fort Liberty. This base that houses the 82nd Airborne and 18th Airborne Corps, again, our premier units, standing in front of them and kind of rallying them to and gouting them to cheer is disgusting. And frankly, I think those are some of from my perch, being forced into a position where I had to demonstrate, I guess, some moral courage and call out presidential corruption. It doesn't sit well with me that the military, the top brass, have stayed silent. So I'm taking this issue very seriously. I think things are going to get worse, unfortunately. I think that he is looking for flashpoints to demonstrate his masculinity, demonstrate his control, and it's deeply troubling to me.
Fair points, Alex. And I'll just add, from the muddy boots perspective, we've both been platoon leaders. I think the difficulty of this moment for those who are currently serving cannot be understated. Let's say that we are platoon leaders again, and we receive an order: take your platoon to provide force protection in Los Angeles. That on its face, we can look at this and we have an obligation to obey lawful orders. If an order is lawful and we say no, then we can be court-martialed for that. At the same time, we walk a fine line, because if we are then given orders that turn out to be unlawful, then we also have an obligation to disobey those unlawful orders. So we're really putting a lot of pressure and responsibility on individual military members to figure out what it is that they're being asked to do, and is there a definite answer on its lawfulness and unlawfulness. So that's something that we've been concerned about with the National Institute of Military Justice. And we just started a new service called the Orders Project that is designed to help people by connecting them with knowledgeable attorneys who can assist them in those very questionable situations.
Yeah, I'm proud to be supporting the effort and amplifying the fact that there are tools out there. I'll briefly mention, these are troops that should be preparing for, again, national defense. They have missions, they have training that they need to do to defend this nation against adversaries, not frankly fabricated crises when the state governors don't need support, or exaggerated concerns. We do need to police our borders, but exaggerated concerns that are pulling thousands of troops out of rotation to be able to conduct these missions. But I wanted to, and it's a difficult place to be in. The platoon leaders are not necessarily equipped with the experience to make those kinds of tough judgment calls. But these are going to be distributed operations where it's going to be squads, 9-man teams with sergeants or junior sergeants faced with seemingly hostile crowds. It's almost an impossible situation where you can see an accident occur and there's blood on the streets, and the military is not necessarily looking for that. I don't think the civilians are looking for that kind of situation, but it's a powder keg. And the work that you're doing with regards to the Orders Project is absolutely essential. I think the idea here, again, I have to look at my own context. When I reported presidential corruption, I ended up in the situation where I didn't have, initially, I didn't have any legal representation. I didn't know how I was going to be able to defend myself or support myself with regards to legal counsel. And I still did what I thought was right, but that's a really difficult situation to be in when you're providing for your family, you're thinking about your career, and your training tells you that you're obligated to disobey orders, but then your personal self-preservation, the way you might be politicized, is maybe pulling you in a different direction. What we can do with this Orders Project, and why I'm so passionate about it, is demonstrate that there's a safety net. If you have questions, there are legal experts, there are UCMJ experts, there are constitutional experts, there are civil military relations experts that you could reach back to get those questions answered, and if need be, get the legal representation if the administration tries to target you. So critically important in this moment to bolster the training of our military leaders to do the right thing.
Yeah, very well said, Alex. And I like what you said, because what we should hope for in a young private or sergeant is not that they know the law on this, but that they're a good person and that they want to do the right thing. Most of the time, that's going to lead to the right answer. And when we start punishing people for doing what's right, then that's when we're really in trouble.
It's great to have you on here to have this this conversation, get some legal counsel and get your views. I want to underscore that I think that I'm talking with my Vote Vets team and the Vet Voice Foundation on how we can amplify other voices, commanders that are have been in some sort of stability operations, peacekeeping operations, how difficult and challenging those are. We want to be able to amplify those. The mission that we set before ourselves is to arm our decision makers, our elected officials in the Senate and the House. There are oversight hearings occurring next week in the Senate Armed Services Committee and the House Armed Services Committee that will be questioning Secretary Hegseth on what he means by sending Marines, and and all the other policies, his trans bans and so forth, how that's going to affect readiness. We're going to take this to the courts and support the litigation that's occurring with military and veteran plaintiffs that are persuasive, explaining why this is so challenging. And we're going to take this to the streets and the court of public opinion to indicate that this is a dangerous road that we're traveling, and the road that really there's maybe no turning back from, depending on where President Trump and his dangerous turn to politicizing the military takes us. So again, thank you. Where can we, I guess, how do people follow you and maybe track some of your work or get a hold of the association?
Twitter, LinkedIn, nimj.org. You'll see our links for the Orders Project and our new service called the Trans Representation Project.
Awesome. Sounds good. Looking forward to catching you again.
Thanks a lot, Alex.
Thanks.